In this video, I'm going to go over how to do glass as well as an alpha cutout for a feather quill on this flat plane. So I have an inkwell, which is going to be glass. I have the inside, which is going to be the ink. And then I have this flat plane that's going to be a feather quill, which is going to be a PNG of a feather. The inkwell, the glass, is on its own material. I call it M glass. Any other glass material I'll just add to this layout. And then I have both of these on a material just called test material. I'm going to export them to Substance Painter. And they'll be in FBX. And in Painter, going to go to File, New, select my file, and here they are. I have two texture sets, one for the glass and one for the other objects. Glass does have to have its own material. I'm going to go for the feather quill first. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually going to be in Photoshop because the image that I have is not yet a PNG. So I'm going to open and here is my image of a quill. It's not a very large image, but it will get the job done. I have a white background. It is a lot easier if you have a solid color background. It doesn't really matter which color it is. The first thing I'm going to do in the layers is click on the little lock icon to unlock that background. And there's a few ways we can select the background. The first way is the magic wand tool, which if you hit W, it'll select the fourth tool down, and if you right click on it, you can go from the object selection down to magic wand. If you click on the white or whatever color background you have, it will select all the areas that are white, and if you right click, you can select similar. This will do a good job at getting some of those other areas that are not connected to the white background. However, it will also sometimes get some parts of your object. Good way to fix that is hit L for the lasso tool and then right click on it because I don't want the magnetic lasso, just the normal lasso. And if you hold down, Alt on Windows or Option on Mac, you can just draw a little circle around the parts you want to be deselected. If there's an area that you want to be selected, you can hold down Shift or the little plus sign next to your object or next to your lasso, and you can select it. The higher resolution image you have, the better these tools are going to work. This is a relatively small image. But once I have that selection done, I can hit delete and I can delete that background. You can also go up to select with the layer selected, select and color range, and I'm going to click the eyedropper on white, and it will give you a selection, kind of a preview of what that mask is going to look like. Fuzziness up here is going to be how accurate is that mask going to be. And you click OK, and it'll do something pretty similar, and you might have to do some cleanup with the lasso tool anyway. And then delete, and this checker background means there is no background available. I'm going to hit C to crop and just crop this image in a little bit more so I have not quite as much empty space. And then hit enter or return when you're done. I'm then going to save as a copy, and I'm going to save this as a PNG, which is somewhere on this list. There it is. So PNG, it'll just be called Quill. I'm going to put PNG at the end so I know for sure it is that one. Click Save, and then you'll get a little pop-up and just click OK. Now I can use this in Painter. So I'm going to jump into Painter. I'm going to find my PNG that I just created. Quill PNG, and I'm going to drag it into my assets over here. In the import resources pop-up, I'm going to change undefined to texture and import your resources to current session. That means it's going to delete it when I close Painter. It will still be in your project when you open it. It'll be in your scene, but it will not be part of Painter anymore. I'm going to hit import, and then it will have it highlighted, usually on the bottom of your assets list. I'm going to create a fill layer in my layers panel, and I'm going to call it feather. And I'm going to drag the feather PNG over here to the base color, and it's not going to look great. I'm in my 2D 3D split. If you're not in this, you can go up to the top of the menu. If it says 3D only, you can change it to 2D 3D split. And if you don't see these move manipulators, hit Q on your keyboard and you can turn them on. Just like in Photoshop, it's basically the free transform. Now, I did not pre-plan at all to make sure the resolution of this plane was the correct resolution, but it'll be close enough. You can scale it however you want. If you hold down Shift, it'll be a uniform scale. You can see if it's really small, it does tile, and it is tiling over everything, which I don't want. But right now, I don't care about the tiling. I just want to make sure that it fits. So that fits pretty well. I'm going to ignore the fact that it's tiling. Actually, right now, if you just go up to the very top where it says UV wrap repeat, we can just turn that to none. So it's not repeating anymore. So now there's only one of them instead of tiling. But you might notice that we do not have a transparent background. There's a few reasons for that. One, by default, the material does not support anything transparent. And two, PNGs are not used with a transparent background by default. We kind of have to set up a little network in our layers to make it work. First thing, I'm going to go to the shader settings over here on the top right little sphere. And where it says ASM metal rough, that's the material being used. I want to go third one down on the left, PBR metal rough with alpha blending. I'm going to turn that on. The alpha blending means there will be transparency allowed. Next to the layers, you have texture set settings. If your layout is different than mine, you can go to Window and Reset UI. That will get it back to the defaults. And if you scroll down in your texture set settings to channels, you can click on the plus sign and turn on opacity. That gives us the ability to use opacity on our project. Now, if I just turn on the opacity, so I'm on my fill layer, I turn on opacity, it's just going to make pretty much everything disappear. And that is not what I want. And the reason it's doing this is the image is crooked, so we're going to fix this later. This is one of the issues with UV wrap repeat none. It might look good until you try to do something a little bit more complicated, but don't worry, it's a very easy fix. For now, I don't care about anything else, I'm just worried about the feather. But the opacity is not using the PNG's background, or lack of a background. It is just a general opacity for the entire layer. I need to create something called an anchor point to reference that opacity to a different layer. Sounds complicated, but the general setup isn't too bad. On the feather fill layer, I'm going to go to this little magic wand, and at the very bottom it says add anchor point. And I have a little anchor symbol called feather. It's called whatever the layer was called. I'm going to create a new layer, and this is going to be called feather opacity. So what we're going to do is the opacity layer for this new fill layer is going to reference the anchor point on the layer beneath it. I'm going to turn off color, I'm going to turn on opacity. Forget where I left off, I had to pause. I have my feather opacity. I'm going to turn off the color, and I'm going to turn on opacity on it. And if I just use this, the whole thing disappears, yay. On my feather opacity, I'm going to create a black mask. And then going back to the magic wand, I'm not going to make a generator like we usually do. I'm going to go down and add a fill layer. This is a fill layer that's going to be part of the mask. And this fill layer can reference that anchor point. So with that fill layer selected, I'm going to come down and click on grayscale, and at the very top there are anchor points. And I should only see one, and it's called feather. And I'm going to have it reference the base color, meaning it's going to look for all that color, and I'm going to extract alpha. Back on the main layer that has just opacity turned on, I'm going to bring that slider down. And you can see it's doing the exact opposite of what I want it to do. It is getting rid of the base color. It is not getting rid of the background. Luckily, all we have to do is right-click on the mask and invert mask. And with that invert, we get a levels node. That's how it's inverting it. And you can kind of clean it up with some of these sliders, get rid of maybe some of the white fringe going around. If you zoom in real close, it'll obviously be pixelated because, again, it was a really low resolution image. But from afar, it will look okay. And just while I'm at it, I'm going to rotate it so it's facing the right way. All right, now you might notice I don't see my ink anywhere. I don't see it in the UV editor. I don't see it over here. I went back to feather and I turned off UV wrap. So you might see part of it wherever the feather is, but regardless, it's not working well. That's because the opacity layer is getting rid of more than it should. And this is a masking error, and the easiest way to fix it is to make a folder. I'm going to put the feather and feather opacity in that folder. It is really important the opacity layer is on the top and the feather layer with the anchor point is on the bottom, because anchor points always have to be beneath whatever layer is referencing them. On the folder, which I'm going to rename feather, I'm going to right click and create a black mask. And then using the polygon fill tool over here, which is the fifth down, I'm going to just select the feather. So now all of this stuff in here is in a folder, and that folder can only be visible on that flat plane. So now I have a very simple PNG of a feather. I'm going to go back and turn on my roughness and maybe turn down that roughness so it's not so shiny. And then I could go and texture the ink, which I don't have a specific material for ink, I don't think. But if I'm just going for a black ink, I'm just going to go for a fill layer. I'm going to make it not pure black, but pretty close to pure black. I'm going to turn the roughness on, make it a little bit shiny, and it's a little bit plasticky, so I'm going to add a filter to it. And the filter I'm going to go with might be one of the matte finishes, just to give it a little bit of a texture. And again, it's going to be really small behind some glass, so I just want it to be more than just solid, boring black. And then I'll call this layer ink. And I will assign it just to that one layer, or that one object. Now on the other material, the glass material, I'm going to create a fill layer. I need to make sure that the alpha blending is turned on, which it is. I do need to go back to texture set settings and turn on opacity for this material as well. And I'm going to turn down the opacity a fair amount. Roughness, I'm going to have it pretty shiny. And depending on how clean or dirty you want it to be, you can add that same metal filter to it, which just gives it a little bit more interest in the roughness. Or you can go down to the actual roughness and type in grunge and have a lot of different grunge maps to have a different surface texture. Sometimes making your glass metallic, which seems a little bit incorrect, makes it look reflect a little bit better. Kind of a dirty-ish glass, and should be good enough. For exporting, for this assignment, we're going into Unity URP. But if you're not going to Unity, you would just export for whatever render engine you are going for. I'll go to test URP, come down to output template, scroll down to Unity, and you want Unity Universal Render Pipeline Metallic Standard. All of these are good, and I'm going to export. If you don't already have a Unity project, I'm going to go to New Project, scroll down until I find Universal 3D. You do not want the 2D or the HDRP or any of these other templates. You want Universal 3D. I'll call this URP demo. Desktop is fine, and I'll create the project. And here I am in my empty URP template. I always like to double check to make sure it actually is URP by creating a material. And when the material is created, it should say Universal Render Pipeline /lit at the top. If it says standard or high definition or anything else, it's probably made in the wrong pipeline for Unity. So you want to fix that now. Then I just need to import some of my assets. I'm going to drag the folder with the textures in it that I exported. Going to put the material in that folder. And all right, I have two, one for the glass and one for the feather. I also need the objects, which I think I just named test. So I'm going to drag those in as well. They are in default Maya units, which are centimeters, which are super, super tiny. So I'm going to click on the FBX file in my assets down here. In the inspector, go to Model and turn off Convert Units, and then scroll down and hit Apply. If that doesn't work, like it did not do anything for me, instead, where it says Scale Factor 1, I'll type in 100 and hit Apply. There we go. And just to make sure. Oh, actually, maybe it did work the first time and I just didn't notice. So I'm going to go back down to scale of 1. They're just relatively small objects anyway. Now you might notice that the group that they're in, the pivot point, is very, very far away. That is annoying. And I have a super messy outliner over here because this is how it was exported exactly from Maya. I don't want to use that, so I'm going to delete it. I'm going to go back to Maya. And just these objects, I'm going to drag them out of a group that they're in. And I'm going to name things. So this will be feather. I'm going to call it ink in inkwell class. And I will export these together. So now I have a new FBX file that hopefully will be a little bit better. However, again, I did not export from the center of the world, which I do like to do. So everything is going to be on top of each other at the center of the world. I'm going to freeze and delete my history, and I'm going to export again. It's going to override that file. And the reason it's nice to have things in the center of the world is wherever you export them from Maya, they will come in the exact same place into Unity or Unreal or any other engine. And because I did not do a mesh combine, I still can move these around separately. There we go. The first material I'm going to set up is the one with the feather. So I'm going to click on the material. I'm going to left click and drag to the base map. So a little more room. Then the metallic smoothness, and then the normal. When I drag the normal on, it's going to ask me if I want to fix now. I do, because it is a normal map. If you don't do that, it's not going to render very well. And I'm going to drag and drop to the feather and to the ink. Now you might notice that, similar issue to Painter, the transparency is not being used. It's a very easy fix. On the material, so I just clicked on my material. At the very top of the inspector, I have alpha clipping. I'm going to turn that on, and when it loads, it's going to be using the alpha channel. You do have a few options for a threshold, so you can, similar to the levels node in Painter, refine it a little bit more. And you might notice from the back, you can't see anything. Right above alpha clipping, you have render face front. You can do front, back, or both. So now it will render both sides. From the side, it will still look, not there, but it will look pretty good. And this is a pretty small object you'll see from afar. I'm going to create another material called glass. And it's going to drag the 3 textures onto it. And again, the normal map, I need to hit fix now. I'll drag this to the glass object. Again, it is not transparent because by default, the surface type of the material is opaque. I want to change that to transparent. It'll take a moment to load. And now it is transparent. Then I can just zero out those transformations and put it in the right spot. So now I have a very simple feather quill with ink. That quill is way too big. Scale that down a little bit. Very simple, but very nice prop to have.